right, in today's video, we're going to be learning how to shade using color pencils. So we're going to draw 3 circles and we're going to make each circle into a sphere. Now, as you can see, I'm free drawing these. They're not going to be the best looking circles. All right, so the first sphere we're going to fill in is going to be a monochromatic sphere. So remember, monochromatic is one of our color schemes. This means one color, so mono means one, chroma means color. So our first sphere that we're going to work on is a monochromatic color scheme. All right, so I'm going to choose some colors. I'm going to choose blue. You want to have a light version and a dark version. You want to have white, and you want to have black. Now, I generally don't do a lot of shading with black because it does overpower the colors and it tones them down too much. It kind of muddies them a little. White lightens the color. It also tones them down, but it doesn't change the consistency of the color, if that makes sense. All right, so the first thing you're going to do, take your lighter version of your color that you've chosen and fill in the entire circle you've drawn. So I'm doing a scumbling technique to fill in the whole thing, so just kind of scribbling, and I'm also not pressing too hard. So I'm just doing a really light layer to make sure that I've got the entire circle filled in. And you want to make sure you're keeping it even. So just like we did with our other color pencil demos, just make sure that your pressure is really even, that you're not making one area too dark and another area too light. Okay, so I've got my color filled in really lightly here. I'm going to start building up value. We need to decide where our light source is coming from. So I'm not looking at an object right now. So I'm going to say light source is coming from the top left, which means light is hitting directly right here. Okay, so that means the shadow is going to be about right here. Okay, so you can kind of see this line here. I'm not going to color it anymore right here. I'm going to leave that be. And I'm going to fill in the rest of this just more with this lighter color pencil. So just like in our other color pencil demos, you want to build your layers of color before you start, pressing too hard, so using too much pressure. You should be using light pressure the entire time and just let your colors build on top of each other. That's going to give you the best end result. So I just picked up my darker value of blue, my darker version of blue, and I'm just kind of filling in where the cast or the core shadow is. You also want to make sure that your shadows, any value you have on a sphere, curves with the sphere. So it's going to be kind of crescent shaped. Think like when a moon is waxing or waning. Now I've got where my shadow is going to be. I'm going to start adding very lightly some extra marks in here so I can start to make this more of a mid-tone. And I'm going to come back down in the core shadow and darken this up a little bit. All right, now I'm going to go back in with my lighter color and build more value in the midtones, add more layers to the blue, try to mix the two blues together a bit. And again, I'm not pressing very hard. I'm just adding another layer of color on top of what I already have. You do want to add a little bit of value to this side. So even though the light's coming from here, this side right here is starting to curve away from the light. So there is going to be a little bit of a darker value there. I'm gonna add a little bit of the light value, the light color down here as well, because sometimes you have a little bit of light reflected off the surface that the object is sitting on. And it also gives the object a little bit of an edge against its cast shadow as well. All right, so I'm gonna go back in with my darker blue to try to deepen up the core shadow values, try to mix the midtones a little bit more. It is possible to do this with one color pencil, but I find the results are better if you've got a light version of that color and a dark version of that color when you're doing a monochromatic color scheme. You could also use the black, and I'll show you what that does when you're mixing that into your color in a second. Okay, so I'm gonna get my black. I'm gonna add some of this black value to the core shadow. And you see it just kind of, it makes the shadow a little bit, I mean, it darkens it, but it does also make it a little dingy. So I'm not gonna use this black a lot. I'm just doing it to help darken the value a little. All right, so now I'm gonna go back over that black area with my darker color, try to mix in this color back in and tone the black down. And blend these colors together a little bit more. All right, so I'm gonna go in with my lighter blue, get these lighter mid-tone values mixed together, get these two blues mixed together so we don't have like an edge here. We don't want to have an edge on an object that has smooth transition from one value to another. This is a round object, and that's what happens with the values. There's a very gradual change from light to dark and dark to light. Okay, so then the last step for the sphere itself is adding the white to help blend some of these lighter colors together. So I'm going in here to kind of lighten that highlight. I'm blending in some of these colors here at the edge. So white is a good blender, but it is going to lighten up the value. So if you don't want that to occur, then use your other colors to blend like I did here. I didn't add white here. This is just the colors being blended together. Okay, and then the final step to finish off this drawing of a sphere is to add the cast shadow. So because light's coming from here, that means the shadow's coming this way. So I'm just gonna draw a little kind of oval shape. All right, and it's going to be darker up against the object itself because the least amount of light is getting to it. So I went in with my black and just kind of defining this bottom edge right here. And I'm gonna go back in with my darker color. And then as I bring the value or the color out towards the edges, the value is gonna lighten. So I'm gonna lighten my pressure a bit. And then I'm gonna go in with my lighter color, kind of fill in the edges here a little. You wanna let the edge of the shadow look like it's fading a bit because most shadows don't have hard edges. Most cast shadows anyway. And then I'm just gonna buff out the edges with my white. Kind of make it look like it's fading a bit. All right, and there is the monochromatic sphere. All right, so for our next sphere, we're going to shade in, we're going to do an analogous color scheme. So first, again, we're going to draw a circle. corner on it. Don't want to have that. If you want to make drawing circles easier, just find a circle object and trace it. I mean, I'm doing it the hard way, obviously. All right, so again, the color scheme we're doing is analogous. All right, so analogous is where you're choosing colors that are within the same color family. So let me put my blues back because we do still need the white and the black. But I decided to do red for my darkest color, then red-orange, then orange, then yellow. Oh, yellow-orange anyway. So this is actually 4 different colors. You still want to have a light version of color and a dark version of color in your color selection so that you have a wide range of values. So we're going to start with the lightest color because again, you want to start light and then move dark. So we're just going to color the entire thing in with this lightest color. And we're going to do the values the same way we did the monochromatic. So the light's going to be going from the same direction. The shadows are going to go the same direction. It's going to be pretty much the same exact as the first one, just with an analogous color scheme rather than a monochromatic color scheme. And again, you want to keep your pressure light. So make sure you're not pressing too hard because you want to be able to layer your colors really well. And if you're pressing too hard to start, then you're not going to be able to mix your colors well. So right now I'm building up some value where the shadow is going to be, because again, we're doing the same thing that we did here. So there's going to be a shadow on this side. Okay, so I've finished with my lighter color. I'm going to go in with my next color, which is just plain old orange. This was again yellow-orange, and we got orange. Remember, analogous, they're the same color family, so they're right next to each other on the color wheel, and I will put a color wheel up so you guys can choose your own color, so you don't have to do the same ones I'm doing. But what I'm going to do now is just build up the lighter midtones from here. And again, you want to keep your pressure light, make sure you're staying even. You don't want to color the entire circle. So like how here where you use the light blue or the light version of your color to kind of fill the whole thing, and then the dark blue is only for the shadow. This I'm filling wherever a darker value would be, but I'm not going near where the lighter values are. Okay, so now I'm going to pick up my red-orange. I'm going to start filling the darker midtones. So again, not pushing too hard. I want my colors to start to layer and really mix well, and they can't do that if I push too hard. And just like you did with the monochromatic sphere, you want to make sure that your values retain a very specific curvy shape. So think like a crescent moon. I'm going to go back in with my second color to try to soften some of these edges again. All right, I'm going to pick up my lighter color again and just mix in with the second color. Try to soften those edges more. So if I wanted to, I didn't have to use the white and black with this at all. I could make this my highlight color and then my red my shadow color. But adding the white and the black does help to kind of push the values farther apart. All right, so now I'm going back in with the second color. So just like before, there's a lot of back and forth with the colors you're layering. The more you layer your colors, the more mixed and natural they'll look. All right, now I'm gonna go back in with my third color, deepen this up a bit, and I still haven't added my darkest color yet. Okay, so now I'm gonna go in with my darkest color and build up that core shadow a little. All right, so I'm gonna add a little bit of black to this core shadow to help strengthen the shadow a little bit, but I'm gonna do it very, very lightly. All right, so I've got this shadow in here, and that does help make that value a good bit darker, but it does also need to be blended. So I'm gonna go back in and work my way all the way back to the lighter value until I'm ready to add in the white. All right, I'm gonna go back in with my red, try to tone this down a little bit. That edge with the black is very stark. This is the one thing you have to kind of, be wary of when you use the black color pencil, is that it can create this very hard line here. So try to lighten that up a little bit or buff it out a little. All right, so now's the time to add my white. So I'm just gonna go over this area and kind of lightly over the surrounding areas to help blend out the color a bit. Okay, so the sphere is done. Now I just have to do the cast shadow. So again, same shadow as this one. You got light coming from here, so the shadow's going this way. All right, and so I'm gonna add a little bit of black right up underneath the edge here, since that's where the darkest value is gonna be in the cast shadow, and then everywhere else is gonna be kind of faded out. So I'm starting with red, mixing it with the black and the cast shadow, and then as I move out, I'm gonna lighten up the colors, because you want that shadow to be faded a little bit towards the edges. All right, so I'm just gonna go around the edge with my white just to kind of smudge out this edge a bit so it's not quite so stark. All right, and so there is the analogous color scheme sphere with full value. You'll notice that where the color was allowed to blend on its own, so through those layers, that it looks brighter, it feels more luminous. And so that's one of the reasons why you want to be careful with using the black and even the white, because those values are going to tone down your color a bit. They're going to kind of make them a little less bright. So to make a luminescent looking color, so bright looking color, you want to just mix with pure colors. All right, so our last sphere is going to be shaded in with colors that belong to a complementary color scheme. So again, we're got to draw our circle to start. I feel like I'm getting better at drawing these circles. All right, so this one is a complementary color scheme. All right, so with complementary colors, you're choosing colors that are opposite of each other on the color wheel. And I will show you guys an example of the color wheel right here with your complementary colors. So for this one, I've chosen to do the color pair yellow and purple. All right, so yellow is my light color, purple is my dark color. Each of your complementary color pairs should have a light and dark version. So this is going to be what I use for shadows, this purple, and then this yellow is going to be what I use for my highlights. All right, I'm still going to be using my white and black to help with my values. But again, first step, this is actually going to be a little bit different than the other one since both of these, the color melded so well with the shadow. With this one, I'm only going to, shade in where the lighter areas are going to be. So we're still using the same light source for these. We're pretending that the light's coming from top left here. So since the light's coming from the top left, that means that the lighter color is mostly filling in the top left of the circle to create the lighter value. And then it's got a crescent shape for the purple, which is going to be the shadow. Now I will be blending yellow and purple together, but if you remember from our value scales with the color pencil mixing demo, not just like the smooth transition, but like the one with the 5 boxes. If you remember that, you remember that the complementary colors mix to create a neutral color. Okay, so now I'm going to fill in the rest of this lightly with the purple. Then I'm going to start to try to cross each of them to mix them a little bit so we can get some midtones in. All right, so I'm going to start to kind of cross this line with each of these colors and try to start to mix them a little bit so that we don't have a stark edge here, because that's not what we want. So remember, spheres are round, the transition between values is smooth, so that means that my color transition should also be smooth from one color to the other. So just as before, this shading process with these two colors is back and forth. So I've switched from purple to yellow and then back to purple a couple of times. So keep going until you have a smooth transition from one color to the other. And remember, your darker color does need to be your shadow color. So right now I'm just trying to add the purple in really lightly right here because it was starting to look a little bit streaky and I don't want that. So just very, very lightly. So it should get to the point where your one color, that's your light color, is almost concentrated to just where the highlight is. And that the shadow color, which is the opposite color, the complement, should be concentrated to where the shadow is. So that the other colors in between are all midtones. All right, so I'm gonna go in with my black and help darken up the shadow a little bit. Again, just like the others, I'm not gonna do a whole lot of black here. I still want to have my dark shadow color be mostly what the shadow is made of. So I still want it to be kind of vibrant looking and I don't want to get overpowered by the black, but I do want it to be pushed back a little bit further. So now I'm going back in with my purple, so my shadow color. And I'm just gonna mix in that black with my shadow color, with my purple. Black does actually mix pretty well with purple, so it doesn't necessarily change the color too much, and I think it's just because of how cool black tends to be. Now, black does come in different temperatures. You can get a warm black that'll mix better with, your warmer colors. All right, now I'm just gonna keep building these layers so I can get these other colors mixed in, this purple and the yellow, and then I'll add in the white. So I'm just kind of building back towards the highlight. All right, now I'm gonna go back in with my yellow and just try to blend out and smooth these colors together. And I'm gonna blend this out a little bit. They got a little bit too yellow down here. Okay, so then the last step for the sphere itself before we move on to the cast shadow is adding in the highlights. I'm going to go over this area right here with the white and then kind of blend out some of the rings around it. All right, so there is the complementary sphere. Now we have to add the cast shadow. So again, cast shadow is the same for this sphere as it was for these two. So we got light coming from the top left. That means the shadow is going to go bottom right. All right, so I'm going to add kind of a dark edge right here. This is the darkest part of the cast shadow. I'm going to go back in and fill in the majority of it with purple. I'm going to do a little yellow around the edges and then white to kind of buff everything out. Because remember, yellow is kind of more of a highlight color in this color scheme, and purple is more of a shadow color. So I'm going to go a little bit more heavy on the purple towards this dark black where the the darkest part of the cast shadow is. All right, so I'm gonna go with my yellow around my edges here. And then in with the white. And I'm just gonna finish it off with a last layer of purple. All right, so there are all 3 of our spheres shaded with different colors and color schemes. So this should help when you are ever using colored pencil to create any kind of drawing that's using 3-dimensional looking forms. All right, thanks for watching.